We're live. Hey, everybody. It's Simone here again. We're here for our second episode of the Living the Body series. So our Living the Body series is sponsored by the 64 Doors and Unlock Your Design, the magical co-creation by Bella, Krystal, and Ashley Pfeiffer that you can connect with on Facebook, on YouTube, and online. Today is a really special episode, one I'm super excited about. Today, episode 2, we're going to focus on dietary regimen. And our guide today is Timothy Brainerd of timothybrainerd.com. And Bella will also be with us. And Bella, you can find Bella on Facebook through the Living Matrix, Unlock Your Design, and the 64 Doors. So today, as we discuss dietary regimen, we're going to focus on how the body relates to food. And I am super excited about this. So Tim, with that, will you guide us through?
Happily, yes. This is a fun conversation. This is going to be a fun conversation. So for anyone who has already joined us, thank you for being here. Simone, thank you for instigating this conversation. We're here to talk about this in large part because of your excitement to learn about this. And so as we move forward through this conversation and the next conversation, this is going to take up a minimum of 2 episodes just to get through some of these deeper aspects of your human design. What we're going to do is we're going to use your profile, your body graph, as a way of opening up the conversation to a more general understanding of what's really happening when we eat. And human design has such a remarkable perspective on the question of eating and how the body relates to food that it's well worth taking a very, very close look at. So this is the beginning of a really fun course of inquiry. So I've been very excited to talk about this for a long time, and you've given me the perfect excuse.
I'm super excited. And you know, if you're following along in our series, we started with the body keys, and I've been really working with my body keys, and I feel like this is the perfect step. This is the perfect learning step for me and for everyone else to build on what we learned through the body keys.
It really is. In fact, I would say that the body keys and dietary regimen form the very foundation of this deeper process of learning from the inside out, where we're actively engaging with the direct experience of our own lives, not only on a physical level, but on a spiritual one. So ultimately what we're doing in conversations like these is we're grounding the spiritual pursuit in our own physicality. And whether you're looking at this through the lens of the gene keys or the lens of human design or the lens of life, what you'll find is that this is how it all begins. We build from the ground up. Foundations allow for the rest of what happens. And so it's the same in the spiritual pursuit. As we learn how to become more and more ourselves, as we seek to allow that perfection that's built into the very nature of who we are to flower, first we need to grow roots into the soil of being human. And this is really what excites me. And I know that the 3 of us have had a lot of exciting conversations about this already. Yeah. Now, before I launch into an excited introduction to dietary regimen, Bella, I would like to check in with you and just see if there's any introductory detail that you're either excited to tell us about or questions that you'd like to ask. I want to give you an opportunity to speak.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I just want to mention that so many people that are in human design, this is something that not many people know a lot about, and that there are also a lot of misunderstandings about. And we were speaking about when people come to me and they ask me, and many times I feel like it's kind of intuitive how I correct them. So there is, for me, this is an era of discovery, and what I feel is that Ra was still experimenting with this. And I even heard some of my teacher John Martin and people that were with him for a very long time ago, they were told, like, go out in your life and experiment with this and come back to me and let me know what you found out. So this is an era where I feel like people like you you dove deep into it with your own body, with your clients. And that's why it's interesting to me, because it's not set in stone. It's still an era of discovery. And this conversation that we have here, it's really to open up for discovery. And maybe we're going to go deeper in more detail into each one of the 12 processes. But today we want to have a conversation around it and really, pinpoint some of the things that are the important entry points. So this is a portal for something that I feel there are a lot of misunderstandings about, and a lot of, like, it's not so applicable when you just read, okay, I'm cold thirst, or I'm a hunter, or I'm a transformer. Like, what do you do with that? So this is what I want to start. It's like an invitation to see if we can get a little bit more tangible and practical about these things.
Oh, so good. Yeah, see, I knew I was supposed to let you speak. Beautiful. And there's a good beginning point. Let's ground this term dietary regimen in human design, because ultimately this is what it comes out of. In fact, in the human design world, for those of you who are familiar, we're going to be entering into the territory that's illuminated through that side of human design known as primary health system. So primary health system, as Bella has indicated, is to this day a very kind of experimental application of human design. It's certainly an advanced application of your human design. And there's nothing about primary health system that is quite as cut and dry as some of the surface level detail that we learn through human design. You learn about your type and your type strategy and your inner authority, and we can pretty confidently point at the mechanism of what's happening there and say, now go do this. And we have this like clear understanding of what that experiment might look like for each of the different types. But when it comes down to this level of application, oh man, we are opening up into a whole new and completely unexplored territory that remains true to this day, decades after the fact. So that's a part of what makes it, I think, so exciting for those of us who have studied it, is that we're not studying to become an expert, we're studying to become a student. Right. Get that difference. It's an important one. So that's what we're inviting all of you into as well, as we continue this conversation, as we move forward into an understanding of what's happening here. We're not providing answers so much as questions. We're just learning which direction those questions are going to lean in. Mm-hmm. And what's so exciting about Dietary Regimen, which is my personal brand, so to speak, of primary health system, my application of it, what's so exciting about it is that it is an individualized invitation. What we're dealing with here is an understanding of how eating works for you as an individual. This is so different from anything else that's happening around food. For the most part, what we deal with when it comes to food is a couple of things. First, very, very utilitarian mindset. We're focused on how to feed the body well, or we're focused on achieving something, whether that be weight gain, muscle, or weight loss. And we see this a lot with women in particular. So there's always some aim where we're using food and we're using the body to get at something, right? The other thing that happens is that we generalize. So everyone should be a vegan, and every vegan believes it, and we kind of go into these different black and white directions where it's very clear that everyone should ... And now we meet human design's understanding of what's happening here on a design level, and all of a sudden that slate gets wiped completely clean. And the question is no longer what should everyone do. The question is only what does your design reveal to us about how your body works and what your body requires. So this is to date the only individualized dietary system that I have ever found. And I've been studying human health, diet, nutrition in particular for over 12 years. This is like a really deep study for me. And in all of that time, this is the single only system that has ever worked for me. That's a really big deal. Yeah, that's why I'm so excited about it.
Awesome. I'm even more excited now.
Yeah, it's also why I've dedicated myself so totally to this direction. In fact, just as a brief history, I'm not going to go into my body history. We don't have time for that tonight, but just for those of you who are listening in, who have an understanding of human design and primary health system, if you're thinking, who is this guy and what are his qualifications? I don't have qualifications, and I've actively engaged this study in my own way and in my own time. But I can tell you that what I did once I learned about it a few years ago is that I turned everything else off. I quit my job and I focused 100% of my attention on this study. I gathered all of the materials that exist on it in PDF format, in print, in video, in audio, and I bore down into a full-time study of this material over the course of years. And I've been applying it directly in my own experience in that time too. So this isn't a fluffy like ideal. This is something I've lived inside of for some time. And so that's what I'll be speaking from as we move forward.
Fantastic.
Okay. Anything else? I want to make sure that this conversation isn't a Tim monologue. There's a lot of information that's just like bursting out of me, but this should be a conversation.
Well, it makes sense that your deep study, because you're a 4-6, right? And so
I'm a 2-5.
You're 2-5, but you bring your projector, right?
That's right.
So you bring wisdom into the world. So this total immersion in it makes perfect sense to me, and to bring us into the future of the dietary regimen. So I'm just waiting with bated breath for the next step. Okay.
Then Bella, is there anything you would like to add or offer at this point?
No, I mean, I am happy to weave with you on, especially, a little bit about like with our own experience, to kind of just give a little bit of like some nuggets to make it, like we said, less lecture wise and more like a conversation. So I'm happy to dive in. We have I want to tell everybody, we could do 1 hour for each of the 12. There are 6 colors and then the binary. We could at least use an hour for each. So today it's not going to be that in depth, but it's going to be a really good way in. And that's what we care about. That's what I care about. Better to do it that way than to overwhelm everybody or to kind of compartmentalize it. I want to do the overview, the big perspective first, and then in one way or another, we can go into detail and zoom in.
Perfect. Yes, let's do that then. Let's start to establish a framework of understanding around this conversation today. Ultimately, what we're aiming to deliver here and what we're excited to share with you is like an introduction to each of the 12 different types of digestive process. Having said that, we need to describe what we even mean by digestive process. We're talking about food, we're talking about the body. So let's build, again, this umbrella, this framework of understanding that we can hold this conversation inside of. So to begin with, I mentioned that typically the question of what to eat and how to eat is a very utilitarian focus, right? What I would love to do in this case is I'd like to become significantly more respectful about this conversation in every direction. Food is not nothing. The body is not an inconvenience that we need to nourish in order to survive. What I'd like to move forward in like the general like feeling and energy or the attitude that I'd love to move forward in this conversation is one of relationship. I would love to consider that what's happening here is a matter of relationship, and that it's not a matter of using something, which, by the way, is very common in our culture. I want to soften that, and I want to come into this respect of nature, respect of ourselves, respect of life as an energetic exchange at all times. I would really like to soften that a bit and to begin to recognize that not only is the body sacred, not only is your individual body sacred and wise, but food and the world that we exist in, all of it is sacred, and we have the opportunity to utilize something as mundane, necessary, and simple, something as available and basic as food, as a doorway through which we can begin to access that sacredness. That's what we want to do here today. And chills as I say this, because for me, this isn't even about food anymore. It's about engaging with our lives on that level of gratitude and just awe at what a gift it is to be able to relate with this just symphony of energies and experience at all times. We're using food as a way of doing that. So that's the beginning framework that I would love to wrap this whole conversation in. We're dealing with relationship. And I've been saying this from the start, we're dealing with how the body relates to food, but let's expand it even a bit more, because ultimately what you'll find as we move forward is that as we zoom away from this idea of using food to do something, we're actually dealing with how our conscious mind relates to our physical body. There's one relationship. We are then also considering how the body is built to relate to food. And from there, we're also considering how the body is built to relate to its environment. And so if you begin to understand that everything is energy and that we're really dealing with multiple densities or frequencies of energy, something solid being a very dense form of energy and something subtle like a thought or an emotion being significantly more refined in its frequencies, so to speak. Everything is energy. So our thoughts and the way that we interact with the body through how we feel and think about it, that's a relationship. The way that we touch and hold and think about and smell and taste food, the way that we relate to food, that's a relationship. And the way that we feel about the room that we sit inside of, from it, the way it smells, to the way it feels in your like heart or in your gut, to the aesthetic of that environment, all of it is affecting the moment that we call eating. Just, if possible, let that sink in for a moment, how complex, how subtle, and how full that experience becomes when it's not just about picking up this item and putting it in my mouth so that I won't be hungry anymore. It can open, and all of a sudden you're in this, I mean, it's like beyond mindfulness. It's a very total experience. That's what we're aiming for, regardless of how your individual body has been built. Every one of us holds within us the capacity to access something as simple as eating in such a meaningful and personal way.
Oh, beautiful.
Right? It's poetic.
So beautiful, yes.
Okay. So now we have what we need to start moving forward. Now we have an understanding that each of our bodies is individually attuned to the space that it occupies. Okay? So that's environment. Food is a part of that environment. We're also dealing with one moment while I figure out where we need to go from here. It's interesting, like Bella said, we could spend so much time here, so much time, and I could talk for an hour on how important it is to retract the attention from how to use food. So I want to make sure not to use up all our time in that way, although I feel like compelled to like make sure everyone gets it. But we need to be able to move on. So the best way to do that is to start looking at the different types of body. In human design, there are 6 different types of body. Each of these different types has what is known as a binary to it. In human design, it's referred to as left or right, left or right variable. For our purposes, we're going to just, these terms are a little too technical. We're going to talk about the different bodies, and then we're going to talk about the 2 different ways that those bodies express, okay? When we're talking about the bodies, we're actually speaking to digestion. And if you think about digestion, what we're really talking about is metabolism, how it is that our bodies take in this case, food, and make use of that food. So you eat a piece of food, how do you make beneficial use of that food? How does your body metabolize the nutritional value of that food in a way that serves the total system of your body? So when we're talking about digestion, we're talking about metabolism. When we're talking about all of this within the context of energetic relationship, you might have already connected these dots, but we're talking about more than food. We're talking about how your body, both physical and subtle, takes in and makes use of information, energetic information. Though we're focusing this conversation on the energetic information of food, which is a very dense form of information, all of this applies to every form and frequency of energy. So this is not only about how we relate to food, it's also how we relate to ideas, concepts, conversation, other people, emotions. Oh man, this is about how your body has been uniquely designed to relate to the world around it. How it's been designed to take in all of the energetic data of life and make use of it in a way that allows your body to operate at its most optimal. Another point where I just feel like I need to pause for a minute so that can sink in. We're really coming to a narrow focus when we talk about food, but the truth here, the potential here is grander by far. Bella, I love to watch your expressions sometimes because I know this is like huge for you and you get it intuitively. It's a big deal.
I mean, I just feel like how do you digest life? Like, what is your way of metabolizing everything that happens to you? Like, it's like, I see the big picture.
Yes.
And it's like, I love that I feel like it's clear also the way you said it. So that's why I'm smiling.
Okay, good.
I actually felt the energy when you shifted the focus to all of that. I was like, whoa, I felt the energy of it. It was so huge.
Oh, good. Thank you both for saying that, because it's what happens in me when I recognize this. And it's really what has changed my life more than anything. I can tell you about how eating in the right way has fixed all of the chronic discomfort that I had dealt with in the body. But ultimately, the value of this is that it's brought me into closer contact with the everyday beauty and poetry and magnificence of my own normal life. You know, this is about ordinary life, but it's about illuminating ordinary life. So we're going to talk about food, but please, as we move forward, keep this in mind. Come back to it over and over again, how much more this can mean to you if you're able to really dig your heels in and explore what it means for you, right? Or an emotion. So as we move forward here, we want to break down what these different levels are. I mentioned that there are 6 primary body types and that there are 2 options, so to speak, for each of these body types. That brings us to a total of 12 different dietary processes or digestive processes, okay? I still like to use the word dietary because, you know, how big of a bite can we take out of life, you know? Mm. It's just a fun way to think about it. So let's talk about this. I would like to think in terms of a hexagram structure. And if you want to know what a hexagram is, you can look behind Bella. We have here a hexagram on either side of her head. Yeah, so a hexagram is a 6-line structure, okay? And the hexagram moves from the bottom line up to the top. So there's a sequence that we're moving in here. And bear with me on this. I'm intentionally weaving in some more technical bits of data because it will serve you to understand what's really happening here. So in a hexagram, you have this evolutionary movement from the bottom or the foundation of that 6-line structure up to the top. And the reason that we refer to it as an evolution is because at the bottom, you're dealing with the most dense possible expression of whatever is happening here. And at the top, you're dealing with the most sophisticated, the most sensitive expression of what's happening. And all the lines in between are a migration from that density up to that refinement, okay? And so this plays into so many different areas of human design. In today's conversation, we're looking at the digestive process. Mm. In previous conversations, this is also what was happening in the body keys elements. You began with the densest element down at the bottom, which was earth, and you moved up from earth to water, which is a much more fluid and refined frequency, up to fire, which is even a lighter frequency than water, and up to air, which is even lighter, and then ether, and then spirit. You saw this same progression. Okay. Here, we're going to find that the digestive process is similarly situated. The sequence is the same. So we want to start with the first. Quick check-in before I talk about this first. Anything either of you would like to add or ask?
No. I like that you tied the body keys through the density to the spirit, and the hexagram related in from the body keys to this. It makes sense.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah, and now I'm, this is the line structure, but it's the same whether it's just decimals. That's the line structure, mm-hmm. But we can also go to color, and that's what we're doing now with it. We're going down in the decimals. So it's like, I love it. We are speaking about the geometry of it and how the hexagram structure just goes in everything. It's going to go down to the base, it's going to go in the line, the color, the base, and the tone.
That's right.
It's exciting.
That's right. And to clarify even one step further what Bella was just referring to, for those of you who are maybe familiar with human design but new to some of this more advanced information, you have a total of 64 gates that show up in the body graph, your human design body graph. Every single one of those gates is only the surface of what's really happening. And this is just the most remarkable thing ever. And it serves to really demonstrate just how precise these body graphs are, because under every single one of those 64 gates are a total of 6 lines, which tends to, flavor the way that particular energy is going to express itself through you. But every one of those lines has underneath of it 6 colors, and every one of those colors has underneath of it 6 tones, and every one of those tones has underneath of it 5 bases. And only one of each of those things is activated in you, which means that for each of us, that gate that you see highlighted in your body graph is actually one of nearly 1,000 different ways in which that energy wants to live through you. Amazing how precise that is, right?
Amazing.
So today, remember, we're dealing with gate. Under the gate is the lines, and under the lines are the colors. We're dealing with that level. That's what we're looking at today, colors. So in human design speak, we're looking at the colors. For our purposes, we're dealing with the digestive process, different body types and processes, okay? Whew. Fun stuff. I don't know what it is about that technical detail. It's just like really fun to see it all come together, you know?
Just so that our listeners, if they, in case they missed it and they want to connect the dots between the lines and the aspects of earth that are related. So it was earth, fire,
water, fire, air,
ether, spirit. Mm-hmm.
That's right. Moving from the bottom up.
All right. Great.
Which, you know, you can think about that. Fire being right in the middle is really fun for me to consider, because fire takes something dense like log, and you apply this, you know, this spark, which amazingly actually incorporates oxygen and water in order to gain this explosive element. And then as a result of this, that log becomes ash and air, kind of, you know, smoke, which eventually does become air. And you can see this this movement with fire at the center of something dense becoming something more refined. And that's also the idea of the refiner's fire. There's a lot of really beautiful symbolism here.
And that's a transformer archetype. So now I'm now I have to go into it because I'm getting too excited.
That's right. You got it. And that's a personal one for both of you.
Yeah.
So let's do this. We're down at the first layer. We're down here with the element of earth. We're down here with the densest possible expression of a digestive process. And here is where we meet the hunter. And I like what you said, Bella. You said the transformer archetypes. Let's think of it this way. Human design would refer to this as the hunter body, but we can think about this as the hunter archetype. The hunter is layer number 1. Now, what we do not have time for today is to go into the specifics of each of these different processes. But what we do want to get across are the different layers, the different names, so that as we move forward in conversation, we're all sharing a terminology, okay? So this first layer is known as the hunter. It's also referred to as the appetite, okay? These are some of the terms that you'll see. This color 1 equals appetite equals the hunter body, okay? Now, that's your main level, and remember, you've got 2 sides to every level. So the 2 sides here are known as consecutive and alternating. Consecutive and alternating. To give you an idea of how this process works, and to give you a sense for just how primitive and dense the process itself is, we're dealing with an almost childlike way of relating to the world. Let's use consecutive as an example, and this is actually my body process, so it's something very close to home for me. You can imagine the hunter archetype, and we'll say we're cavemen right now, or the Neanderthal stage. You're hungry, and so I, the hunter, I go out and I look for food. And I have my bow and arrow, and I shoot. I go looking for the food. I shoot the food. I take the food home. I eat the food. I mean, this is very primitive in terms of its function. It's direct. It's straightforward. I'm not getting distracted. You know, I don't go hunting for a deer and shoot a tree, right? I know what well, hopefully not. You know, maybe I'm one very confused Neanderthal, but ultimately this is about a very direct engagement with food. And on this level, the body is only capable of making sense of one single ingredient at a time. Whoa, that's really something. And there will come a time where we can talk more about this, and I have a whole story wrapped up in this and my response to it and my experiments with it. We don't have time for that today, but understand that what's happening here is very primitive. The hunter body can only make sense of one single ingredient at a time, and depending upon whether you're consecutive or alternating, there will be these ways of engaging with these single ingredients that serve your body system specifically, okay? But one single ingredient. So think about this for a moment, how challenging this can be, and how different it is from anything we've heard about before in relationship to food. Something as simple as coffee has become quite a process, you know, because you've got coffee with some cream in it, or coffee with cream and sugar. Well, you scale back to the coffee itself. That may or may not be a single ingredient, because most coffees are blends. And so maybe you end up with a single origin coffee from one farm, right? Very different thing. And so there's a certain amount of focus, a certain amount of discipline that's required by this type in order for the body to actually understand what it's being fed. What happens when food is blended on this level is that the body says, huh, and then flushes it. It literally doesn't understand multiple food types at once in your mouth. And so it flushes it regardless of how expensive that food was, regardless of how organic or clean or natural or whole it was, regardless of what anyone has told you about the benefit nutritionally or otherwise of that food. If it's more than one ingredient on this level, your body is likely to flush it and lose out on its nutritional value simply by virtue of the fact that it doesn't understand energetically what's happening. That is a mind blower, is it not? It blew my mind. It changed my life. I got excited about that one.
Yeah, I'm seeing the comments from some people. So these things, if you have advanced human design chart done, is going to state the type. And some of them, for example, genetic matrix, you can do it, but it's going to speak about the binary, I think, and it's not going to actually speak about the color. So might need a little bit of deciphering. But if you go to any kind of analyst or somebody who has a software that is more advanced, it's going to say on it. It's the same, exactly, that it's part of your human design, but on the more simple charts, sometimes it's not there. And I also want to tell you guys, because I'm seeing the live comments, we have a lot of people saying, thank you for doing this. I always wondered about this aspect. I'm loving this. So we are on the right track with this subject.
Good, thank you. I wanted to ask about that.
It's mind-blowing because as you're listening, I'm like, bread. It's basically, you go get the deer and you eat the deer. You go catch the fish, you eat the fish. That's it. You grow a garden, you go get the tomato, not the tomato in the corn or anything else. You just go have some tomatoes. Or you grow an orchard, you have multiple fruit trees. You eat the apple, not the apple and the pear. I mean, it's just like no fruit salad.
That's right.
One thing. I mean, it's mind-blowing for people who are hunters, right?
Yes.
And I think about children who only like one thing. They only want one thing on their plate. They're driving to this is what I like. Or this is what my body can handle. I just want strawberries.
That's right. See, Simone, this is why it's so fun to talk with you, because of the way that your mind works and how you can expand on these things. This is precisely what happens for a child who's built like me. They're very likely to separate the things on their plate. I mean, we are animals in this way. Our bodies know precisely what they need, but we're trained up to, not pay attention to our bodies. We have to pay attention to our bodies in order to apply all of this, which actually I meant to state at the beginning is what this is really all about. It's about befriending our bodies. Boom. You befriend your body, you befriend the world around you. It starts from the inside, it feeds out. So yes, Simone, you're 100% right. What you just envisioned with this hunter going for the fish, yes, exactly right. There's nothing really creative about this. Bread. Bread is a process. You make the bread. I love bread. Well, it doesn't serve my body. There's no way for my body to make sense of bread.
Well, just having the understanding, because I'm also thinking about the parent who feels guilty because they haven't given their child a varied diet, and all their child wants is a banana. Yeah. I just want a banana, but you got to have more than bananas, or I just want peanut butter or whatever it is, right. Well, then it's peanut butter that you go and grind the peanut and there's only peanuts in it, or,
no
whatever
sugar.
It is, it's just the one thing. And so then how empowering for a parent to know, oh, my child is a hunter. So this desire they have is their innate wisdom.
Yes.
To get exactly what they need. I don't need to feel guilty. I don't need to feel bad because my child's wisdom is coming through. I can just, support and be with my child in the magic of its wisdom. I mean, to me, it's mind-blowing. I wish I would have known my kids,
Yeah, it's good. Good. It is mind-blowing.
Tim, I'm wondering if you would say something, because we were just saying it's about digesting life. Would you say something about how your metabolism, make sense of it when it's more than just food? Or would that be too much to go into that? Or just a little nugget maybe to be, what does this mean to relate to life in this way?
Sure. This is a fun one to talk about. Again, I can speak to it from experience. What I've learned as a result of meeting this information is that multitasking isn't a great fit for me, right? If I'm going to engage in something, I want to be able to engage in it from start to finish. And so if let's say that in an eating perspective, let's say I have a banana and an apple. I want, in my case, because of how my body works, I want to eat the whole banana and then I want to eat the whole apple. This also works when I'm getting work done. Let's say I've got Facebook open and Gmail open and all these different things happening at once. It's going to scramble my little pea brain real quick. If I have emails to respond to and I respond to first one email, then another email, then another, and my inbox is clear. And then I move to Facebook and I post. And then I go and I brew some tea. If I can move it in this similar fashion, I'm allowing myself to engage the patterns, the routines of my own personal life in a way that is the same as what we're dealing with in food. It's also the same for conversation. In fact, it's actually been a bit of a challenge for me to work out these live conversations with multiple people. So if I can direct my focus to a single speaker, if I can direct my focus in response to a single question, it feels nice. I can do this. I can bring 100% of myself to it. If there's multiple people talking at once, for instance, if I were trying to track live comments right now, I'd probably not be nearly as present with you as I'm able to be right now. Does this make sense in response to your question?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I want to be sure that we don't confuse our viewer in the sense, if you would eat an apple and a banana, how would you be able to eat them in one sitting, or would you wait in between? Is it possible to have several things on the plate and eat one at a time, or would you actually, your digestive system need to wait before you take the next part of the plate in that case?
Another great question. So there are technically correct answers here, except that, remember, we're dealing with an experimental application of human design. So when I provide an answer, it's not an answer. It's an answer from my experience, right? Mm-hmm. So what I have found is that, yes, I can eat it in a sitting. In my case, the way that I work, I need to start and finish one thing and then move on to the next. And what works for me is to wait until the taste of the first item is out of my mouth, and then I'll move on to the next. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But remember, this is all only true for that first of 6 levels, right? So here is no longer the question of what type of food should I eat, what should should it be organic or not. We're not answering any of those usual questions at all. We're really talking about how the body relates to the food. Mm-hmm. It's different, right? Mm-hmm. So I think it would be important to move on at this point. Bella, are we clear to do so?
Yes.
Okay, please do continue. I want to say, Bella, as comments come up that really highlight themselves to you, bring them into the conversation. And mm-hmm. Simone, as you kind of gain that snap vision of how this works, please, I feel that you expanded my understanding through what you shared. So,
well, the other thing I was thinking when you were talking about how you applied this, how it helps you understand how you digest the world, and you do one task at a time. And I'm thinking about how we make each other wrong by saying, oh, he can't keep up, he only does one thing at a time. Mm-hmm. But really that's the way you maximize your capacity as working at this hunter-gatherer level. So I'm just so loving this process of going through, because it's going to help each of us understand this is why my body operates. And also, for those people who were made to feel wrong about how they were functioning and operating in the world, to have the loving kindness to just go, oh, that's why my body likes that.
Yes.
And to be empowered in what they innately knew was true, but the world around us has said, no, that's not the way. So this is fantastic. I can't wait to hear too.
Okay. It is empowering. It is very empowering, very exciting to recognize that your innate preferences are not only okay, but necessary, and a part of your body's guidance system, a part of your built-in wisdom. It's huge. It completely adjusts the orientation of your mental relationship to your physical form. Such a big deal, right? It also allows each of us to begin to express as individuals in a social setting. Most of us watching this conversation, hopefully, probably all of us, are adults. It's no longer about what mom or dad or some teacher or anyone says we should or shouldn't do. We need to step into this place of responsibility in which we come into contact with our own individual selves, physically and otherwise, and engage with life in a way that is intentional, in a way that is like a student, that allows for us to learn from our inside, from the inside world, from that wisdom that's buried in this case in our genes. It's just remarkable stuff, right? So yes, very empowering. Let's look at the second layer. The second layer, color 2. This is known as the taste type, and it's known as the gatherer body. So first we had the hunter, now we're looking at the gatherer. And think about this again, let's play out the archetype. The hunter goes and gets that one thing. The gatherer grabs their basket and they go and they get some berries and they get some fruits and they maybe gather some greens. You know, here we start to see gardening for the first time. So the gatherer is capable of engaging with food in a completely different way from the hunter and in a way that is significantly more varied and expressive and creative. It's a rather beautiful thing. But the gatherer digestive process is still very primitive. And so what you find on this level is that they're very, very selective. Again, play out the gatherer. This berry is delicious. This red berry is delicious. This red berry will kill you, right? And so there's built into the physical system this awareness that some foods are perfect for me. Some foods, never ever. So I hope that I won't get in trouble for mentioning this later, but my mom is one of these, and she has always, always hated fish, always. And I grew up with like no fish, don't like the smell of fish, no fish in the house, we do not eat fish. Fish is disgusting, don't say the word sushi. You know, it's like, it was just a hard no, because for her, no fish. Her body says no to fish. And the next person over with the same design as her might love fish. And the point is that each of these people has an individual subset of preference. They're built into who they are, these preferences, and those preferences are going to guide them to the perfect diet. But oh man, does that take some time? Oh boy, is that a process. What you need to do on this level is you need to develop such a great awareness of and sensitivity to your own body's genuine impulses and preferences that you can feel when it wants something versus when it doesn't. And then you need to develop the courage to give it what it needs to honor what you're hearing. So there are layers and layers built to this level. And it's interesting, though we're going to continue in our different levels of relationship to become more and more sensitive and more sophisticated. This second level is actually the most challenging to apply because it requires the most of you. The gatherer type is the most complicated in terms of application because no one can do it for you. Yeah, it's a complete reconditioning of the palate. It's a remarkable process. Very few people will have what it takes to truly apply this because there's so much personal awareness and responsibility and ultimately time that is required here that I think a lot of people tend to fall off. It's easier to just tell me what I can or can't eat. When in fact, what is happening here is a development of that same question inward to listen into the body and say, well, what do we want to eat now? Wow, what a new question, right? Moment by moment questioning of experience.
Yeah, I know somebody as the second type who started to do some smoothies and really, I think that was the thing, and really liked it. And then fell into the trap to think that liquid diet was what he was going to do. And then suddenly the whole system, but it got really bad. I think he lost like 30 pounds or something because of that trap to think, yeah, it did work with some of these things. I think it was like fruit smoothie or something, but then he went on a raw green diet and then it completely didn't work. So to not fall into what you're saying, it's that selection doesn't stop. You probably won't find the perfect diet. It's always going to be you who's going to know, and the body's going to say yes or no to things.
That's right.
And it's changing. Right. So there's that flexibility that you have to be in tune to. Well, yesterday fish sounded great, but today I don't want that. You know, I don't want those leftovers.
Yes and no. Interestingly enough. So let's look at the binaries now. On either side.
It's funny because there are people just asking about it. I actually think we're only going to get to 3 today of the colors because there's so much worth here anyway. And they're just asking, what are the binaries? Can you tell us more about it? So yeah.
I'm watching the time too going, whoo, boy. Okay. So the binaries here are known as open and closed. Open and closed. And again, because we really are trying to get through as many of these as possible, we can't go into the specifics of how these work, but a few things I can say. In addition to being very picky, this is what is known as a closing down process, regardless of which of these options, so to speak, you're exhibiting. In time, your what I like to call desert island foods, that list of your all-time favorite foods, the ones that in every case work for you, become smaller and smaller until you have this perfect diet. And you just know that, boom, if you go to this food, it's going to work for you. These people also are very regimented. They can eat the same thing every day for weeks on end. And someone else will be like, oh, how can you have that again? And they're like, I can't tell you much except that I just really want it still. The other thing is that there's a certain flexibility, to your point, Simone, that's built into the seasonal cycles. So this particular type, the gatherer, again, it makes sense, doesn't it? The gatherer is going to be attuned to seasonal cycles. And I've even seen in a few cases where women had this color, that it's not only seasonal, but even cycles of the moon will affect this. So there's something about cycles that's happening here, and ultimately it's a sensitivity to the body's yearning for something. A friend refers to this level jokingly as picketarians. They're picky. They're supposed to be. How fun, right? Talk about something that we berate ourselves for, but ultimately that's a part of your process.
Right. And to know that, okay, I'm a 2, I'm a picketarian. And that's my body's wisdom showing me the way. Boom. And now it's okay to be a picketarian because it's your body's system.
Yes, that's exactly right. Again, there's a lot more here. And again, this particular level takes the most awareness and the most time to speak to. So we kind of have to move past it, because otherwise we could lose ourselves here. Okay. Do you feel that it's okay to move on to the 3rd level?
Yeah, I mean, maybe something on, because we said it for the first one, how you relate to the world, not just with food. If we could have a little bit of a nugget for that, I feel like that would be fair.
It would be fair. I was afraid you were going to say that. So as we move past the 1st level, which is my own, which is what I live inside of, you have to understand that anything I say is contemplative. I've spent a lot of time thinking through these things, but I don't live inside of them. So ultimately, my invitation is to you, considering what we've discussed. What might this look like for you? If what I'm describing is true, then what might it look like for you to move into life in a way that is fully dependent upon the inner impulse of what you're called to in any given moment? What might it mean for your everyday process to be somewhat more regimented and selective in terms of what you apply your full attention to? My gut sense is that this is the sort of person who is going to engage with the same general things every day. Maybe you're very ritualistic and every morning you have a routine. And this is something that you fully depend upon. Now, there are other aspects of your human design chart which either lend to that or take away from it, all of which have to be factored, which is why ultimately dietary regimen is only appropriate as a complete analysis of your holistic design. What we're dealing with here is like looking at one single pinpoint of who you are. So don't get lost in what we're describing here, but ultimately it is helpful to consider what it means for you. If we're talking about someone who is the gatherer, it's very likely that you will move through life in a way that exhibits that same archetypal quality. I'm wondering, in fact, Bella, if you have any ideas on this.
Yeah, I want to help people to think about this, because we're speaking about hexagram structure, and this is the 2nd line, you could say. This is the 2nd level. So to also go back to the line structures, if you're a hermit, people are going to knock on your door, but you're picky. You're not going to want to dance with everybody.
Yeah, good.
And not everything is going to feel in flow with you, knowing that we said the 2nd level is the water. Not everything is going to be natural and flow for you. And you need to be picky, and you are allowed to be the hermit. So I feel like to just bring that back. And even the 1st line, the investigator, that's one thing at the time and knows if it works or it doesn't work, weak or strong. Like that's the 1st line themes. So to really see, we're working here with a structure that is faithful to us through the lines, the colors, the tones, etc.
Oh, good. So there's a refinement here. And really think about this. That 2nd line that Bella was just describing, it's so perfect, Bella. Man, that's exciting. So when it comes to food, if you have a smorgasbord, 100 different types of food in front of you, you might want two of those things on the table. And it's the same if you're a projector. You might receive 100 invitations and 98 out of 100 are going to be a nah, but then 2 will be perfect. Or you're a generator and you have 100 opportunities to respond, and your only true hell yeah impulse happens maybe once or twice, right? So there's this there's this refinement. And so learning how to feel into the body's communication systems, the signaling systems of your body, to know when your body is saying, oh yes, whether it's to what you're eating or to going out with a friend or whether or not to post something on Facebook, same story, same application.
Yeah, I see somebody on a tango floor and there's 100 dancers.
Oh, good.
And you just want to dance with two.
That's good. You're talking to a guy who's like terrified of dancing, but you know, I will go with it. That's good. Yeah. So let's look at the 3, the color 3. Do you both feel comfortable moving into that now?
Yeah.
Okay. So this 3rd level, both of you share this. So this isn't going to be perfectly new to either of you, but it's a really exciting level. It's one of my favorites. It's one of my favorites because the 1st level and the 3rd level in particular actually hold the greatest potential for like immediate physical transformation down to the shape of the body, the shape of the face. It's remarkable what can happen on these levels. And on the 3rd level, we're dealing with color 3, which is known as the thirst type or the transformer body. It's right there in the name, transformer body. These are the sort of people who can gain weight or lose weight overnight, seemingly overnight, and not just a little, like tens of pounds, like overnight. And so you have people who say a 2nd color who look at a 3rd color and they're like, how is it that they can just lose weight so quickly? There are many things that contribute to this, but ultimately the transformer body is one that, when appropriately nourished, will exhibit like tonal perfection. Boom, you have this ideal body and it just shows up. Same with the 1st level. When you're out of alignment with your ideal dietary regimen, with your correct way of eating, well, you can kind of balloon up. It's pretty amazing. If you're a color 3, you need to learn about your body type. It's important. So
I'm excited. That's me.
Yeah. So here we go.
Here we go.
2 sides.
Okay.
Cold and hot. So now we're dealing with temperature, right? Temperature of the food. We're also dealing with, like, there's alchemy happening here. You know, we started to blend foods in the 2nd level, but here in the 3rd, and when we look at it in the environmental side of things, we're actually dealing with something that's known as kitchens, which is all about like a creative space that's shared with a group of creatives. You imagine the family in the kitchen and everyone's kind of involved in helping to bake a loaf of bread, for instance. It's that same general theme that plays out here. And so now we're looking at temperature, and there's no longer a question of how much foods you can take in or whether or not they can be blended. It's all about temperature. And so the question is, does the food need to be higher than your body temperature or lower than your body temperature? And that will be determined by whether or not you are a hot body type or a cold body type. The reason for this, let's say, for instance, that you have a cold body type, and we're going to go just a little bit further into the operation of this than we have for the others, because both of you share it, and that was the commitment to kind of help you understand what's happening here a little better. So let's say you have cold, and you have your human design, advanced human design chart, and it says cold. What this means is that you have a digestive process that runs hot. And so the temperature, the literal temperature of your digestive process is so hot that it burns off energy. Your metabolism runs hot. So when you can take in cold foods and liquids, what happens is you regulate your body temperature. You establish equilibrium and give the body everything that it needs to effectively metabolize its food. And so there is no question about what you should or shouldn't eat, really. You're the sort of person who can make use of just about anything, provided that it's colder than your body temperature. That's incredible to consider. But think about the 2 different sides here. So if you're cold and you're drinking a glass of ice water, your body is going, thank you. And it has everything it needs in that moment. If you're hot and your digestive process runs cold and you need heat in order to stimulate that metabolic process, and you're drinking cold ice water, yeah, your body is not going to be very happy with you, because you're freezing out something that's already sluggish, right? So it's a really interesting thing to consider here. It's very, very easy to get this particular level dead wrong, and a lot of people do. In fact, another funny family story, again, I really wonder if I'm going to pay for these. My brother has he's hot, And so while I was reading his advanced human design chart and introducing his dietary regimen to him, he has a cup of ice soda. And then like partway through our conversation, he went and got like a bowl of ice cream. And I'm just like, oh, this is the opposite of what you need to be doing, you know? But the reality is that if and when the time comes that he's truly ready to engage this process and explore his own version of an experiment here, he's going to find that his whole body responds like this. It's a very, very simple level, but application is something you have to honor. And if you don't, your body will tell you that you're not. And if you do, your body will demonstrate that immediately. It's impossible to miss. Mm-hmm. I'm saying that based on my experience. Again, this is really varied. Everyone's going to have a different experience, but from my observation with everyone on this level, it's like a really big deal when you get it right. What do you do make of this since you're living in it?
Yeah, I can say something. Like I was saying to you, I realized that I've always done this. Like smoothies used to be my diet, and I always had my dad, for example, saying like, "Oh, she doesn't eat," because he didn't think that was food. I would say that's one thing. So I feel like we do have it in us, and it's there. And if people can just leave us alone, we can trust the body. The other part of it is even when I did something called the 8 body types, and it's using the pulse, and it's a Korean way of mapping. And then I'm a stomach type, and the stomach runs hot, right? So it's all about the heat again, and to lower the heat. And even when you make tea or you make barley tea, because that's lowering the heat, you drink it cold. And what I feel, there is something, because when we think, okay, you can eat anything. Actually, no, I cannot eat anything. And what is it I don't eat? I don't eat spices, because it goes without saying that spices create heat. So if I'm a cold type, spices are not good for me. And there are some other things, especially if we go into Chinese medicine and those things, we can see they create heat in the body. They create heat in the stomach. Yeah. So I would say that there is something to it that actually goes down to food as well. But it's explicable. It's not that it's completely off. It goes with it. But there's always refinement to understand more with it.
Yes. I'm glad that you made a point of saying that, because it would have been very easy to misunderstand what I was attempting to say. On this level of the color, it is true that the question of what to eat is gone. But in the holistic understanding of what's happening in your design, there are multiple different gates and different activations that will determine what you should or shouldn't eat. And in the end, regardless of what any of us or human design has to say, if you're learning how to tune into your own body, you will find in every case that it shows you what does work and what doesn't. Mm-hmm. But what we're identifying here, again, is like an umbrella. This is the context within which all of the other questions play themselves out. You know now that the most basic need that your body has is, in your case, that the temperature of what you're engaging with be below that of your body temperature. And so if we expand this beyond food, this means that you're probably the sort of person who could benefit from a room temperature that's a little bit colder than someone like myself might prefer. I'm a bit of a lizard. I like it to be warm. That may not work so well for you. Other things like taking a cool bath or shower instead of a hot one. You have the Wim Hof method. Man, that's probably perfect for someone built like you, and it's probably actually potentially harmful for someone on the other side. Really think about that. Again, if you generalize something like this and it just works, and then you put someone who's hot into an ice bath, that could really, really harm them. Right?
Yeah, Tim, and I want to point out something you said. The body's going to tell you if it works or it doesn't work. And here I want to bring it again to the hexagram structure. The third line, it's trial and error, right?
Yes, it is.
I think we need to, like a third Transformers, we need to go wrong too, because we are kind of robust. We're going to shake it off and be like, that didn't work. And then when people come to us with maybe with the same color, we're like, that works and that doesn't work. That's the process of the third line. So it's also about getting it wrong, because then that's the process of getting it right, or at least at knowing what doesn't work.
Yeah. And the gift is that you have the transformer body that's going to tell you very quickly. It's providing this communication. Oh, that did not work. I don't feel good. Or, oh my goodness, overnight I gained 5 pounds.
Yeah.
So for me, as a cold, and I just discovered that I was a cold this last summer. And when I found out, I just had the very basic information that I was a cold, I was like, this explains why I like cold food so much. I'm the person who can just take leftovers out of the refrigerator and eat them cold. Yeah. And people will say, don't you want to, let's warm that up? And I'm like, no, I'm good. I like it just like this. Tastes great. And I have come to make, I enjoy having a smoothie every day for one of my meals, and that has felt really nurturing. I will say that I'm struggling with the transformation part. So it's never really been easy for me to lose weight once I put it on. So I need to really dig down, some more to see, it's encouraging because now I can work with my body and say, oh, you have the capacity to transform. Show me the way, create the desire in me. And I will say that the challenge I have experienced with the cold is that, and I love smoothies, but I also like to chew things. So I'll eat a smoothie and it's great, but then 3 or 4 hours later, I want to chew something. It feels like, what am I going to chew? So and I've been experimenting with fruit out of the refrigerator or in the refrigerator because I like cold things, but sometimes when you put fruits or vegetables in the refrigerator, they don't taste so good. The flavor isn't so robust. So I've been playing with just having them on the counter at room temperature and enjoying that. But I think there's more for me to learn to reconnect with my transformer body that can lose weight like that.
And Tim, I love what you were saying. I think you did precise something that many people didn't know. It's in relationship to the body temperature. So if the body temperature is 37 degrees, I don't know in Fahrenheit, but in your body, then when it's 20 degrees in room temperature, it's still colder. So then it's good. And that's what I feel. I like to eat many things in room temperature. I don't necessarily like to drink ice because I feel in my stomach like I have ice, So it's actually, that's a really good distinction for people that think it's going to possibly be really hot or really cold. Yes. No, maybe it just needs to be some degrees less than 37.
That's right. And there's a lot more that plays into this. Actually, there are tricks for this level. That we will get into, and so what I'm thinking is this: we've dedicated another conversation to kind of using your body graph as a way to kind of go deep into this area, and when we do that, we're going to not only look at the color, but we're going to look at the tone that underpins it, as well as other areas of your chart. So, for instance, one thing that comes to mind, you mentioned about losing weight. Well, you're an emotional type. So this is going to play in powerfully. There's a lot that we can learn about how you may have learned to use food as a coping mechanism for emotional intensity and stress. We're going to look at those sort of things. We're going to learn about what sort of meats you should or shouldn't be eating based on your design. There's a lot that plays into here. But one thing that I need to state before we conclude this conversation and probably finish the rest of the, 6 remaining body types on our next call is simply this. Ultimately, if we're able to nourish ourselves in the way that our bodies need for us to, what we're getting at is our ideal body, period, our ideal body. But none of us knows what that body looks like. Really consider this for a moment. We have an ideal of what we would like for our body to look like based on advertising. And it's like, if I could use expletives in a respectful way right now, I would. It's very wrong. It's complete nonsense, the way that we've been expected to hold up particular social ideals based on advertising primarily. And so, especially for women, it just breaks my heart. There's always this thing, you've got to come down to like a wire. The reality is that each of us is an individual, and each one of us is going to express our healthiest, most powerful self in a different way. So for me, I'm a tall, wiry guy. But the next guy over, my own brother, for instance, he's built differently. He's going to be bigger and thicker and quite a bit stronger, right? But he's not going to look like me. There is no set ideal. The point of this course of inquiry is to identify what your ideal is, not by enforcing it, but by discovering it. And that brings us right back to the very beginning of the conversation, which is where Bella led off from. This is about discovery. We don't know what we're going to discover along the way. So the flexibility that you mentioned earlier, Simone, has to be alive in each of us. To engage this with an open mind, an experimental, scientific mind that says, let's see what happens. Careful notes along the way.
Well, and I also like the point that Bella made about, I can only use Fahrenheit. So if it's, one of the things in my own life is that I've lived in Arizona for a long time. And it's hot.
Exactly right. Yeah.
And it has never, I would leave. I've left, of the 20 something years, I think I left all but 3 summers because I literally just couldn't take it. And, I like it there when it's cool. In the winter, it's beautiful and I'm very happy. But I also, so getting back to what Bella said about, okay, what's the room temperature? And what is your body's temperature? And, thinking about the temperature of your food in that context too. So
I want to say something more. I mean, we're going to stop with the third one, but
yeah.
this is the other thing. I love warm temperatures. Like I would be like almost naked here. I love when it's warm. Why do you think I do that? I think I do that because when it's this warm in my environment, I can actually drink cold and I'm not going to be overheated. So that's very interesting because when it's warm, I can eat cold, I can eat fruit, I can eat things from the fridge, and then I feel great. And it's also something with the third line. My mom always said it. I would sit in Sweden in the winter with like 2 big things on me, and I would drink tea, and I would drink like a big cup of tea, or for example, and then she would see me take off my clothes, and she was like, "What are you doing?" "Oh, okay, you're drinking tea." And it always happened. If I was drinking something cold, I would, put things on. So the transformer body type is like almost a chameleon. Like the temperature is really guiding you, and your body's like, again, instantaneously saying, "Off with the clothes" or "on with the clothes."
Yeah,
very
I believe that makes a lot of sense. And it individualizes its application to you. What's interesting here and what's useful to note before, and there's more here, again, there are tricks, but just as like a concluding remark here, I would say that you're dealing with a temperature regulation from the inside out. That's really what's happening. And so there's a heavy focus on liquids and the temperature of those liquids. We haven't even really touched on that, but we need to. And so it's regulating temperature from the inside out. We'll expand on this in our next conversation.
All right. Well,
how this next one goes.
Yeah, so if you've enjoyed today's episode of Living the Body, we hope you'll join us next week. Remember, Living the Body is being sponsored by 64 Doors and Unlock Your Design, the co-creation of Bella Krystal and Ashley Nicole. And you can find them on Facebook, YouTube, and the internet. Our host for today, our guide for the day, Timothy Brainerd, who is a genius at the body code and the body keys. You can find him at timothybrainerd.com. And if you're interested in Soul Whisperer or Quantum Shaman me, Simone Gers, you can find me at simonegers.com. Thanks so much for being with us today. Timothy, thank you so much for guiding us through. Bella, for your amazing weaving of this information with human design and gene keys. Loved it. And take care, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye. Thank you.